do this to Isaiah?
What? Tell him the truth? That his real mama is as black as he is?
All you people think about is color.
Well, me and Isaiah, we the same kind of people.
I can't even remember the last time I watched this movie. I remember seeing it in theaters, but I was much too young to understand what was going on. After watching it again for this recap, I realized they never really considered what was best for Isaiah. They literally snatched him from the only home and family he'd ever known and expected him to be fine, which wasn't realistic or healthy at all. Poor kid is going to have separation anxiety for life. And I didn't know this movie was based on a book as well. I'm anxious to read it, especially since there are certain things I hope are explained more in the book that were kind of vague in the film. With that being said, while watching this movie, I noticed a lot of things and I have my thoughts. But before we get to that, it's time to recap. So let's get into it. As the movie starts, we meet one of our main characters, Kyla, who is obviously on drugs. She has a newborn son named Isaiah. When Kyla leaves to find her next fix, she leaves Isaiah outside. Mind you, this baby is 3 days old, has nothing but a blanket covering his body, and Kyla gets her fix, passes out, and by the time she wakes up, Isaiah is gone. Turns out he was rescued and brought to a local hospital after being discovered by two garbage men. And Isaiah was in bad shape when he arrived at the hospital. He'd been outside in the cold all night. Plus, he had to have been malnourished and affected by whatever drugs Kyla was taking. It's at the hospital where we meet Margaret, a social worker who immediately takes a liking to Isaiah. Kyla finally sobers up enough to remember Isaiah, but by the time she goes to get him, he's gone and she's frantic. She automatically assumes that he's dead. Meanwhile, Margaret spends time with Isaiah and starts to form an attachment to him. Kyla starts spiraling around this time due to her continued drug use and also the guilt of losing her son. She goes to a corner store and tries to shoplift, but she was much too obvious. She didn't even care that there were cops in the store watching her every move. They see her stealing and swiftly hem her up once she tries to leave the store. We meet Margaret's family, her husband Charles, and her daughter Hannah. Margaret is a workaholic. She often takes her work home and even into the bedroom, which can't be good for her relationship. She's not present with her family at all. And when she tries to set up a date with her husband the next day, he gives her an excuse. We see that some lady on the job has his attention. This is definitely coming back up later. Meanwhile, Kyla arrives in prison and gets placed into a program to help to get her clean and get help, which included therapy sessions, assistance with learning how to read, and job placement when she gets released. Margaret continues bonding with Isaiah. One day, one of her coworkers asked her a hypothetical question.
Let's say a nice, well-meaning white lady came into your office, told you she was thinking of taking a black crack baby home. What would you say?
Not to.
Maybe it's just me, and I know this is based in the mid 90s, but the number of times they refer to Isaiah as a black crack baby, it truly bothered my spirit. And they say it so many times. Apparently, Margaret did not follow her own best advice because we fast forward to her bringing Isaiah home. Hannah is receptive to him somewhat, even though she feels that Isaiah doesn't like her. And again, the crack baby thing.
Just rock him a little bit, but don't look right in his face, okay?
Black babies sometimes have trouble with that.
We fast forward again. Now Isaiah is a toddler and is officially adopted by Margaret and Charles. Hannah still tolerates him, but shows her irritation with Isaiah after he has a tantrum at her school play. Isaiah was so excited to see her that he loudly called her name while she was performing. Then he started screaming after hearing the loud music, and the loud music triggered him. Kyla is clean and out of prison now. She rents a room from a lady, Marie, who has two kids of her own that she doesn't take care of. Kyla looks after them, specifically the youngest child, Amir. She meets with her teacher and counselor, Gussie. Gussie had her reading a book that clearly triggered her. While she read the book out loud, she started crying, which made it clear to Gussie that there was something deeper going on. Kyla admitted that she left her son, and it was because of her that he was dead. When Kyla makes it home, she learns that Marie had been rushed to the hospital and the kids were with her. So she goes to the hospital to get them, gets them some food, and brings them back to the house. Just as they make it home, Eddie, some random guy in the building, follows her and tries to get her number. Now, maybe I'm just super alert, but him following behind her while she has those kids would have had me taking out my pepper spray. Because why are you so close behind me? Like, what are your intentions? He eventually goes away though. As Kyla cleans up her place, she finds a glass pipe and gets the urge to smoke, but luckily she gets distracted by Eddie. He talks with her in an effort to get to know her, and he even tries to serenade her with this mess.
Concrete. Never know who you're gonna meet when you're walking down the street on the concrete.
Kyla works as a nanny for a well-to-do family, and while she's at work, Gussie calls and asks to meet with her. When she does, Gussie informs her that Isaiah is not dead. He's very much alive, and he's been adopted. Kyla is relieved to hear this and instantly wants to see Isaiah, but Gussie assures her that she will see Isaiah again, but it will take time. She warned her not to let everything she's worked so hard for go down the drain. Now, Kyla was much too impatient. She found Isaiah's records and tracked him down on her own. She follows Isaiah and his nanny to the park. For a second, she's able to see him. She's even able to hold him briefly before the child she was caring for started to cry and she let Isaiah go. We fast forward to her meeting her lawyer, Kadar. He judges her harshly at first, and we learn that technically Kyla never gave Isaiah up for adoption, never received any communication informing her of where he was, his adoption plans, nothing. Granted, she didn't have a permanent residence, but she was in prison. I would think they could reach her there if they were really looking. Kadar takes on her case for free since her case will be covered by donations reserved to help women in her position. It wasn't long after that Margaret found out that Kyla wanted her baby back and planned to take her family to court. Margaret and Charles meet with a lawyer, Carolyn. Margaret tells her that she followed every procedure, which included a newspaper notification, search for Kyla in the prison computer system, and even hired a private detective. Mind you, Charles wasn't a part of this. He went off of what Margaret told him, which makes you wonder, did she really do all of this? And did she use her position as a social worker and knowing the processes to her advantage? Their lawyer tells them that Kyla had the right to be heard in court, and child, they were big mad.
We're talking about a woman who is a junkie, who put her kid in a garbage can. Someone who should be arrested, not given back her parental rights.
Carolyn gave them a heavy dose of reality, which they weren't ready for.
This isn't a simple issue. You might raise a black child with the best intentions in the world, colorblind, but in the end, the world is still out there. He needs to know who he is.
Tell me why Eddie found his way into Kyla's home. He bribed the kids with snacks and free cable. Somebody seriously needs to give these kids a stranger danger talk. This could have gone really bad. Kyla immediately kicks him out, but he continues to follow her around, offering to take her groceries up. He tells her that he likes her and kisses her without her permission, but she likes it. And child, if she likes it, we love it. We fast forward to Kadar meeting with Kyla to show her her new place. He sets this up so that she can prove that she's stable and can take care of Isaiah. Kadar was quite the investigator. He knew all about Eddie and the fact that he was married. He told Kyla to get rid of him. Kadar believed that black babies belonged with black mothers, and he intended to make that happen. Shortly after, Kyla moves out of Marie's, and of course, Amir didn't want her to go. Kyla gradually fixes up her place, and those kids told Eddie where she lived, and he showed up with them in tow. Again, stranger danger. Kyla confronts Eddie about him being married, and he insists that he's separated and that he and his wife don't talk, and his marriage means nothing. Red flag. I mean, there's been multiple, but super huge red flag. Kyla tells him to get and stay gone. Gussie helps Kyla to get prepped and pretty for court, and when she showed up, Margaret was in shock. Kyla had a team, and this wasn't going to be easy, which made Margaret very nervous. I just want to add in here that I believe that Margaret had her own image of how she thought Kyla would have looked. She thought she would look like rough or unkempt, and she thought that she could maybe use that image against her. So that's why I think that when she saw her and she her being cleaned up and looking very presentable, she got nervous because then she knew that it wasn't going to be easy. Kyla also credits her faith for giving her the ability to get sober and better prepared to be a mother. And it was after day one of this hearing that Margaret started having meltdowns. Margaret was afraid she was going to lose Isaiah. On day two, Carolyn brought up Kyla's past of having sex for drugs, the fact that she didn't know who Isaiah's father was, and that her support system was full of reformed drug addicts. She's questioned if she'll relapse, but Kyla insists that it will never happen. They also discuss how drug use affects babies. Most have deformities, learning disabilities, and other issues. Kyla visits Amir for his birthday. Though he was upset she left, he let her in and accepted her gift. Kyla gave him words of encouragement that came from a place of knowing.
I know things right now seem like it don't make sense to you and you don't understand, but I've been just where you were. It ain't gonna be easy, but it don't mean you can't make it.
On day three, Margaret is questioned on if she combs Isaiah's hair and who taught her how to comb it. She revealed that Isaiah had a black pediatrician. Race takes the main stage here. They begin to focus more on that than what was in Isaiah's best interest. Kadar's investigative skills emerge once again when he confronts Charles about the affair he had with his coworker. Now, what this had to do with caring for Isaiah, I'm not sure. Maybe it was a way to make them seem less stable. I don't know. Later, during recess, Kyla and Margaret meet in the restroom. In an effort to show empathy towards Margaret, she tells her that she's sorry, but Margaret didn't want to hear it.
No, I just want my son back.
Your son? You fucked some junkie in an alley 3 years ago to get high.
And it got worse.
Don't do this to Isaiah.
What? Tell him the truth? That his real mama is as black as he is?
All you people think about is color.
Well, me and Isaiah, we the same kind of people.
Margaret and Charles don't talk about the affair once they get home. Charles gets upset and leaves the house. Later, when Charles returns home, he tries to be affectionate with her, but in all reality, how can she even get excited knowing that he just had an affair? And she learned this literally hours ago. On day 4, a specialist is called up to discuss why it was best that a black child grow up with black parents. Often, black kids would live with white families until suitable black families were found, which often took years. The goal was to protect the child's long-term interests.
I am sick and tired of the attitude that says that taking poor black children out of their environment and placing them in an affluent household is better for the child.
Eddie shows up to court to tell Kyla he filed for divorce. She wasn't moved. Kadar asked Margaret what kind of books she read to him and if they read books by black authors.
You ever stop to think how Isaiah must feel living in a world where he never sees anyone like himself?
Margaret gets defensive and asks, what about love? I see her point, but sometimes it's not that simple. But she does bring up a great point.
We should be thinking about here. What is going to happen to the spirit of this little boy?
She mentions how if they take Isaiah away from the only home he's ever known, that it will kill him.
So only you can save him. You're the great white hope.
No, but I am his mother.
In the end, it's decided that Isaiah will go back to his biological mom, Kyla. And this process was so jarring to watch, and it must have been even more so for Isaiah. He's basically ripped from Margaret's arms. He cries so much that he falls asleep as he's on the way to Kyla's. When he wakes, he's in a new world, far away from what he's always known. And poor Margaret, not only did she have to go through this whole process, she finds out that her husband has had an affair on her, and then she loses her child. She was going through it. Isaiah immediately shuts down for the first few days. He doesn't talk much, doesn't want to eat, and appears down. He started having tantrums at school and other places. Anything could set him off, and nothing would calm him down. Poor baby was traumatized, and it was very clear he wasn't taking the transition well at all. In his mind, Margaret and Charles were his parents, his family. Though Kyla was his biological mother, he didn't know her. She was just a person he was with. there was no attachment. Now, Kyla had grown up in foster care, so she understood how this transition affected him. Her biggest fear was that he would withdraw into himself and never come out.
I know what it's like to want to get inside yourself and just disappear.
So she swallowed her pride and called Margaret to meet her at Isaiah's school. When Margaret arrived, she told her that she wasn't trying to give him back, but she wanted Margaret to take care of him until he could handle the transition better. All she asked was that he be around his people and remain at his same school. Kyla loved Isaiah enough to know that she wasn't the best option for him at that time. Above everything, she wanted Isaiah to be happy and loved. And at this point, both women understand each other and relate to the love that they both have for him. When Isaiah sees Margaret, his face lights up and he runs towards her. Poor baby was miserable. But both women come to an understanding about Isaiah, and that's pretty much the end of the movie. And here are my final thoughts. What bothered me most about the handling of Isaiah was that they made it more about race than what was best for him. I understood where they were coming from. Black children are often better raised by Black parents, or at least raised around other Black people, because growing up Black is very complicated. I also understand that it was wrong for Kyla to lose her parental rights without being informed legally, but at the same time, she technically abandoned him. For some reason, though, I believe that Margaret used her position to move things in her favor. This alone makes me want to read the book because it just makes sense. It also makes me wonder if this happens when more, wealthy families are looking to adopt. Can they bypass certain processes to get the child they want? Once Kyla got clean and got herself together, I believe she was capable of being a good mom. And I love the way she cared for Marie's kids, particularly Amir. And even though she proved to be doing better, every action has its consequences. She abandoned the baby, whether it was intentional or not. This other family raised him for years. You can't expect a child to have known one way of living to adjust well when he's ripped from the only home he's ever known and basically placed with a stranger. Yes, she was his mom, but she was still a stranger to him. There wasn't going to be this magical bond that allowed him to connect with her. He did not know her. And when a child is that young, it's all about attachments and what's familiar. They interrupted his world and expected him to be okay. So unrealistic and jarring. Margaret loved Isaiah and was the only mother he knew, and she was a great mother to him. Hell, he even got more love and attention than Charles and Hannah most of the time. Kyla loved Isaiah enough to put her pride to the side and allow Margaret to be a part of his life because she knew that it would be best for Isaiah. I wish they would have been able to do this from the beginning. Instead of ripping him out of the home, they should have started off with maybe a few hours, then a day, then alternating weeks, like gradually increasing time with Kyla until he was comfortable. Because if they already knew he was predisposed to certain conditions, why would they ever think pulling him so abruptly from Margaret's home would work? In the end, I hope they continue to work together to make the transition better. I gotta read the book to see how that turned out, child, but I have a feeling it's gonna piss me off. Anyway, that's it for this review. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. If there's a movie recap you'd like to see, click the link in the description box below to submit your request. The next review won't be a movie recap, it will be a full season recap of College Hill ATL, and you already know how we do. So see you there. Bye.